Hey YouTube, I'm Greg. I'm going to take you through how I made $58,000 owning my first home. Now, when we set out to buy our first home, we had no intention of kind of like flipping it or making money on it. We just wanted a home that we could afford. We were pretty much broke, just paid off our student loan debt, really didn't have any money to begin with. But this was kind of the process of going from living in an apartment, wanting to get our first home, something that we could afford, not like overstretching ourselves financially, but also like trying to make good financial decisions because we're trying to set ourselves up for the future. So we originally were looking for a house, kind of in the $130,000 range. This is in North Carolina, so houses are cheaper. We don't currently live there anymore. We really probably can't get that here in New York where we live right now. But, we were looking for, move-in ready homes. And my wife and I were looking, and, we found a couple that were, decent. But, we weren't planning on staying there for super long. And as I was running the numbers, I realized that, we just don't want to pay a ton for a house. Like, I like not spending money. My wife likes not spending money. So overall, we're just fairly cheap people. We're just kind of looking. We're not able to find like what we like in the price range that we're at. And, I bring up to my wife like, oh, we could just get a house and then kind of fix it up and then live in it, because then you can get exactly what you want, at a price that's, cheaper. There's something that we like. And she looks me dead in the eye and goes, but you're not handy, so we got to get a move-in ready house. Excuse me? So that led to us getting a fixer-upper. So about that fixer-upper, we ended up trying to find a house that was under market value, would be considered, a wedge deal or below market. Probably not something a flipper would be interested in, something that you could move into if you really wanted to, but within an affordable price range. So I'm going to go up and throw up a screenshot of the house we ended up buying and kind of the progression of how it got cheaper and cheaper. As you can see, it started listed for $100, then slowly dropped down to where we purchased it at $75. I did some quick comps, and I thought, that the house would be worth about $135, $140 after we sold it, just based on the neighborhood and the time frame of when we bought it. So we ended up going to look at it. We ended up putting an offer in. It was listed at $80. We put an offer in at $68. Not really knowing anything. They were like, yeah, no. So we countered at $75, then ended up getting the house for $75. I'm just going to throw some pictures up on the screen. So as you can see, it's not in terrible condition. From the pictures, it's actually in a lot worse condition than it really looked on the pictures. Mainly it was like the drywall was terrible. They had this built-in of this wood paneling. The kitchen was terrible. There was 5 layers of linoleum on top of the original hardwood. That ended up having this like funky glue on it that we couldn't get off. And there was only one room where we didn't have to touch anything at all. Honestly, most of the issues in the house were drywall and things like that. You could see where they had gone and like flicked with the drywall knife, not taking off a ton of mud, and then just painted over it. Like, didn't even bother to sand, like it was so clearly raised on it. So whoever owned this house had no idea what they were doing, and honestly just shouldn't be working on a house at all. So during our inspection phase, we found out that the back of the house, there was a lot of moisture. There was a leak in the downstairs shower, so I actually ended up dropping the back of the house. And obviously, inexperienced us, we were like, oh yeah, no big deal, we'll just fix it real quick. And actually it did end up being easy to fix, and actually it wasn't very expensive to actually lift the back of the house and re-support it. So actually kind of that, we'll take care of it attitude actually ended up working out for us really well. So I know you all are dying to know the numbers. So we ended up buying the house for $75,000, putting $20,000 into it. So we're into it for $95,000. Our sale price was $165,000 after commission and realtor fees and things like that. We ended up taking home a check for $153,000, minus the $95,000 there. So we ended up making $58,000 on the home. So I'm going to kind of do a cost breakdown of what everything costs, because a lot of things don't really cost as much as like the fixer-upper shows make it seem like they do, especially when you're doing it all yourself. This for us was more of like a side project. My wife worked and I work, and it was just kind of a nights, weekends, just in our spare time. So we basically ended up making an extra $60,000 over 2 years just by working on nights and weekends, which, is a lot of money, especially when it's a lump sum at the very end, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I've got an extra $60,000, $58,000 in our bank account, and it's actually catapulted us into being able to afford more real estate. So we'll start off here. I don't want to make this too super long, especially in the areas that people probably don't care as much about. So in the living room, we actually ended up doing blown-in insulation because there was no insulation anywhere in the house. So our electric bills were crazy through the roof. So we ended up doing cutting holes and doing blown-in insulation. I got a quote from a contractor for that. They wanted $3,200. We rented a insulation blower as well as purchased the insulation from Home Depot. We were out the door, I think, $220, and it took us a day and a half to do, my wife and I together. So we saved a ton of money there. And then also in the living room, we did the drop ceiling. We took that down, just drywall, mudded that ourselves. We retouched all the walls there, took down that nasty wood paneling built in, and then just added some new light fixtures there. We did the boob light fixtures, and they, I think, are $20 at Home Depot, maybe $30. I think they might be $30. I think that sounds a little bit more right. And then for the kitchen, we just ripped up the flooring. And for the longest time, we had no flooring in the kitchen because it was, like I said, it took us 2 years to do this process. So, flooring, when the floor was essentially fine, wasn't necessarily high on the priority list. So in this kitchen, we did a vinyl plank flooring. When we actually put it down, it ended up being $1.70 a square foot. So I think we spent about $300 on that. And then for the cabinets we did a Lowe's stock white. They were like a diamond white shaker. They were just in stock cabinets. So I think we spent about $1,800 on cabinets. And then I ended up making a concrete countertop for, it was like $350. We originally were going to have like a solid surface countertop put down, but they kept trying to they were a little shady about the price. They weren't being totally honest with us. I think they kind of thought we were like idiots. I don't know. But they were trying to overcharge us by like $600. So I'm like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. So I just learned how to do concrete countertops, and I built them. They're beautiful. I love those. Those are my favorite countertops I've ever built. And they add some great value to the house. And then you look at the backsplash. The backsplash only cost about $15 worth of tile because it really wasn't that much tile there. And it was leftover tile from when I did the upstairs shower, and same with the grout. So it actually didn't end up costing us anything like extra, but it was only about $15 worth of tile because it used less than a whole box of tile. And then we'll move on to the downstairs bathroom, which this was my bathroom, and I really love the gray slate tile. That tile was $1 a square foot, so almost nothing, in the grand scheme of things. This bathroom was the one that had the water leakage. We ended up fixing that. That was just, miscellaneous plumbing parts. Everything ended up being okay. It was nothing too major. So both the bathrooms were actually a full gut, as you can see from the before pictures and the after pictures. Both bathrooms each individually only cost about $650 a piece, and $300 of that was the vanity and faucet and shower head and things like that. So just in terms of like tile and material, like thin set and tile and Durarock and things like that, it really didn't end up costing that much. So about $650 each bathroom, both downstairs and upstairs. My wife wanted a subway tile upstairs. If I was to go back and redo both these bathrooms, I would probably reglaze the tub. Those tubs we just cleaned, but I think they probably could have looked a little bit better. But we enjoyed them thoroughly. And for the cost of them, I would 100% do those again. Now moving on to the upstairs, this was like a quote-unquote loft area. It was the entire upstairs of the house. We ended up using that as our master bedroom. This had the wood paneling there. We didn't necessarily have to rip that out, but it didn't look the greatest. Also, it wasn't the best quality job. So we ended up putting in insulation behind all the studs there because that was just like a crawl space out behind. You can see the little door. And throwing up drywall, which looking back, it was actually a real big pain in the butt to put drywall there because it was just not easy. And the wall where it met, because it was like a kind of a sloped ceiling, So kind of did one of these where it's flat and then diagonal and then down. And the actual wall started probably about 5.5 feet down on the sides. It was a Cape Cod style house. So that was a real pain in the butt to put in, but I think it added a lot of good value to the house. So basically what we did was we spent money on things that would make us money. We didn't really do any accent lighting features, which ended up being okay. We only spent $30 on the LED boob lights, and then we redid the kitchen, which obviously made us a decent amount of money, including the appliances. We were into the kitchen for, I want to say, under $5,000. $2,000 in cabinets, $2,400 with the concrete countertops, and the appliances were actually the only thing we left was a dishwasher, range, and microwave, and that was probably just over $1,000. So we were probably into the kitchen for $3,500. Oh, and then this island that you'll see in the picture, we ended up purchasing that right before we moved. We had intention to take it, but we didn't actually have room for it, so we left it for the new owner. And that was a $400 IKEA island, which I really thought made the kitchen a lot better. So our goal was to spend money on things that are going to make us money. We did do the roof on this house. It needed one. Actually, one of the hurricanes came through. The roof sprung a leak. The original roof when we bought the house probably had 27, 30 years on it. The insurance company ended up paying for half the roof, so that actually ended up being really, really well. And then when we painted it, a friend of mine came down. We actually painted it together. Looking back, we should not have hand brushed it. That was terrible. Honestly, probably took me about 4 weeks to do it. It was terrible. But, I have since painted other houses, and I just purchased a airless sprayer. I got one on sale. But hand brushing a house is really, really difficult. But, I think it did add some good value. Looking back, about the color, I don't know. We're having difficulty picking out a color, but the new owners liked it, so that's really all that matters. So when we moved in, we had intentions of moving out, after 4 or 5 years. We really didn't know how long we were going to stay. Like I said, we didn't have intentions to make money on the house. We just wanted the best house possible for what we could afford, and we were willing to put in the work to make that possible. But I am super glad that we did not and decided to buy a below market value deal and basically fix it up and flip it ourselves. Because if we were to buy that same house at $165,000, like the move-in ready version, we're going to move out after 2 years. We'd have to sell it for $175,000, $176,000 just to break even, because you got to plan in for your 6% realtor fees. Plus I like to throw in another percent just to be safe. So, if we were to buy it and sell it for the same price 2 years later, we could lose 10 grand just by owning the house, which obviously is not a good financial decision. And that's how I made $58,000 owning our first home, just working on the nights and weekends and just moving out, taking profits, moving on to the next thing. Thanks for watching. Check back for more content. If you like this video, hit it with a thumbs up, and I'd love to subscribe. See you next time. we were looking for it in the $140,000 neighborhood, across the street, kind of kitty corner down a little bit. They were having new construction selling for $155,000, $160,000. And after we purchased the house next to us was a 2-bed, 1-bath, 1,200 square feet, ended up selling for $122,000. And we had a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet. So that was just another good indicator for us. Obviously we'd already purchased the property at this time, but it was reassuring to us. And the house behind us was a 3,300 square foot home, which actually ended up selling for $220,000. That was kind of an outlier because that was a weird home to be in that neighborhood. But regardless, it still looked good for our property value.